Well, hello, Northside. Happy one-year birthday to all of you. My name's Ken. I'm the lead pastor at Oregon City Christian Church, and we have had the privilege of being a sponsored church with you during this incredible last year. And I tell you what a year to plant a... Well, hello, Northside. Happy one-year birthday to all of you. My name's Ken. I'm the lead pastor at Oregon City Christian Church, and we have had the privilege of being a sponsored church with you during this incredible last year. And I tell you what a year to plant a church. With COVID and the wildfires and just everything going on, yet you guys have risen up to every challenge. You've stuck together, you've served your community, and it just tells me that God has you exactly where He wants you to be. So I want you to enjoy this celebration, this time together of worship, and just enjoy each other and look forward to the next year, because we're looking forward to being in it with you. God bless you.
Good evening, Northside. Let's stand together. Coming on the clouds, kings and kingdoms will bow down. Every chain will break as broken hearts declare His praise. But who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before. Let's go! So open the gates. So open up the gates. Make way before the King of Kings. Our God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. But who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. Oh, we're here to worship You, God. We're singing, who can stop the Lord Almighty?
Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord?
We'll sing. Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before Him. This is our prayer, O Lord. Oh, great and mighty One, with one desire we come, that You would reign, that You would reign in us. We're offering up our lives, a living sacrifice, that You Sing it with me. We sing, oh, great and mighty one. With one desire we come, that you would reign, that you would reign in us. We're offering up our lives, a living sacrifice, that you would reign, that you would reign in us. God, as we celebrate tonight, that's simply our prayer, that you would reign. God, this last year and forevermore, that this body of believers would constantly and always sing, and from our hearts, God, would you reign in us? We pray this in Jesus' name, amen. Y'all can be seated.
Amen. Northside, it is good to see you. My name is Jamie Mills. I am one of the pastors here at Northside, and I'm going to lift this up because I can't see very well. It is always good to be with you guys on pretty much every Sunday evening, but tonight is a little something special, something that I have been looking forward to for, 364 days. And so Northside is turning 1, and I am incredibly excited, and this is going to be a great evening. Before I get into that, though, I want to make a couple of announcements just because we're not having the host tonight. One of them is next week, the 21st, we're having a baptism Sunday. So if baptism is something that you are interested in or something that you want to know more about, you can email us at the office. It's office@northside-albany.com. We already have 3 people that are scheduled to be baptized next week. Not exactly sure where we're going to be putting that trough in here, but if you've ever thought that it would be cool to be baptized in a horse trough and do it with 3 other cool people, we can hook that up, right? I'm telling you. And so the other thing I want to let you know is March 5th, we're doing our second man meal. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a meal for men. And so it's going to be right here. Don't know exactly what we're eating, but one of the things that I'm really excited about is Seth Trimmer from Grace City is coming to share with us. One of my friends sent me a recording of a message that Seth gave that I just felt like was perfect for Northside, and he's agreed to come and share that with us. So Seth will be here that evening. It's going to be great, and so I hope if you're a guy that you'll be interested in coming. If you want to come, you can email the office and RSVP, but we'll also have some information for you on how to do that next week. Couple of things that we need some help with. We are reorganizing the way we do setup and teardown, so if you're willing to help do setup or teardown at least once a month, you can email us at the office. We're looking for someone that can help out with web maintenance. I don't know if you guys know, but a good friend of mine, Chris Manali, has been doing that for us. He's about to become a dad for the 4th time, right? So he needs some time to connect with his kiddo, and it would be great to just kind of have some help for him anyway. And so anyway, so with that, if you want to be helpful, let us know. And then I'm looking for a specific person who's good with communicating and scheduling, that we have one specific need with somebody with that skill set. If that's something that you can do, let me know, and I can give you more information about that. So, with that, I am so excited to celebrate with you guys this evening. In fact, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and I've had a hard time containing myself. No joke, I've been a little bit giddy, so if it gets a little weird, I just want to give you that heads up front that could happen. So Northside is 1, right? 1 year old, and I've been thinking about that. You know, that 1 year old, that's like that sweet spot where it's still kind of cool and even cute. Considered, it's okay and considered cute if you stagger around and drool on yourself. You still even get away with messing yourself every once in a while. So it's that sweet spot of being 1. And so Northside is 1. And I am like incredibly grateful. Like, thinking about that, it's already been a year. Like, it seems like it was like just that fast. And what a year it's been. I remember, as Northside started, literally, we had a few practice services, and then I don't know if you guys remember, there was that one epic Christmas Eve service at Oak Grove, and then we just had a few real services. We opened up our doors for the very first time on February 9th, and it was great. It was an awesome experience, our very first official Sunday. And then 5 weeks later, it happened, right? It happened. I remember exactly where I was when it happened. You know, I remember that the staff, which we'll talk about here in a minute more, but it's like I remember the staff, as much as we knew how, I mean, we had the annual plan together. We worked hard to do everything that we could do to be as ready as we could be. And then literally just like that, all of those plans, all of the hard work, all of the prayer just kind of felt like it was done. And I remember the staff meeting when it happened. We were all sitting around a plastic table in the middle of our office. It's really all that will fit in our office if you haven't been there. But it's like we were sitting around a plastic table, and I remember looking into the eyes of the rest of the staff that were sitting around me and like wondering exactly what would this mean for a church that was literally 5 weeks old. What would it mean? It was pretty heavy. The conversation was pretty heavy. And it would have been easy, I think, despite the struggle and the hurdles and the chaos and these impossible attempts at planning and just feeling overwhelmed, and the whole situation was just heavy. I mean, I think it would have been easy to give up, to be distracted, to be discouraged. But the truth is, like, the more that I thought about it over this last year, you know, and I've went through numerous pictures, and I've spent more than my fair share of time like just kind of considering the year that was. And if Northside had to come up with a theme for the 2020, what would it be for you? I mean, what would you say about Northside, the theme for Northside for 2020? Because for me, the more that I looked at it, even though I'm not going to lie, man, it's been hard. But if I had to give a theme for what 2020 meant at Northside Christian Church, this is what I would say. I am amazed at God's incredible goodness and undescribable faithfulness in what has been less than ideal circumstances. I would look you each in the face and tell you that I think Northside is healthier today than it was on February 9th. And that's only because of the goodness and the faithfulness of the Lord Himself. I am blown away. This is the weird part I was telling you about. Somebody needs to kick me. So when it comes to you all, I just want to tell you that I'm thankful. I know that it's required patience on your end to put up with me a little bit, and the planning thing has been a nightmare. I just want to tell you, hey, you try to plan something in the midst of all this. Like, it's not easy. It's been hard with changing rules, and, you know, let's be honest, everybody has their own opinion on what we should and shouldn't be doing. It's been hard. But you guys have stuck it out, and you've prayed for us, and you have been, I want you to know this, like a genuine encouragement. I can't tell you how many times the staff has sat around that same plastic table in the middle of our office and have mentioned exactly how blessed we feel by you as a church. I couldn't say enough. This is going to sound weird, and I get it, and I'm okay with it. I hope you are too. But as I was looking forward to this tonight, there was, for one reason, one thing that has stuck out to me that I was super excited to do. There's a group of people that I'm incredibly proud of that has really stuck with it. I remember, you know, that around the table when I was telling you, like, the staff, I remember when the news hit and the staff was kind of sitting around the table, and with the help of our management team, no doubt, like, we decided that we were going to go ahead and go online. I didn't want to. I was talked into it, and it was the right decision because by the time that Sunday came, we would have had to anyway. But I remember looking around in the eyes of the staff as they were kind of feeling like overwhelmed and like, what does this mean? And I wish that I could give you that picture. I wish I'd been smart enough to take it. Because in the face when it would have been easiest to give up and to walk away, what I saw in their eyes was like this resolve that this whole thing would not be what defines Northside. That's what I saw. And so within a matter of days, this group of people turned what was like a brand new church that was meeting in a brand new school. They turned this all around to make this an online service that took all kinds of work. And they did it in a matter of, like, what was it, 3 days? They were able to get that done. And I want you to know, like, it's been incredibly hard, but this is a group of people that have been working tirelessly through this whole thing to make church a possibility. They've been praying. They've been working more than we are able to pay them. They continue to show up, even though I'm not always an easy guy to work with. And so I was hoping this morning, as I introduced them to come and share with us, that you would say thank you the way that they deserve. So I want to welcome the staff up, and I'm going to ask you to say thank you the way they deserve. think we can get one more here. That's what I'm talking about. I was going to do a cartwheel, but at 45, that's really sketchy. And so I thought it would be great for us to be able to let the staff share with you. We don't have a ton of time tonight, so they have 30 seconds. I'm just joking. They have just a couple of minutes. I've asked them to each kind of just talk about their favorite memory of 2020 as a church. And so I'm just going to turn it over to them, and I want them to know, like, I love you guys. I'm proud of you guys. Northside ultimately is God's idea, and we exist, and we're here still to this day because of Him. But we wouldn't be here without you either. And so just so you know, I know that, and I'm thankful for you.
Thanks, Jamie. So Jamie asked us to spend a couple minutes talking about our favorite memory over this last year. He told us to write it down and make sure we were purposeful about it. So here are my notes, Jamie. I listened, did what I was told. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jim Atkins. I'm the youth director here. Very blessed to spend time with the youth of our church. I don't want to get the same thing Jamie was doing, but I could really get emotional about talking about it because I've spent a lot of my life focused on youth and doing things for youth. And so August 23rd, 2020, Braden Leckerkirker, Reagan Leckerkirker, Lexi Bosshart, Blake Bosshart, and Carson Hemmers got baptized at our church. And man, that's right in my face. So that day stuck out to me. To be honest with you, Jamie, after that day, I went home. I was pretty jacked, pretty happy. I thought we're done. We were done as a church. We did what we needed to do. We baptized 5 young adults. We got a lot more work to do, obviously, but that day to me was probably the best day over this last year. And I've been blessed with a lot of great things that happened over this last year, seeing the church grow. But you got to believe, as God looked down and watched 5 young adults get baptized in our church, a young church going through what all the stuff that we had to go through, that for 5 young adults to profess their faith in Him with everything that was going on for a church that just got started, that's got to say a lot of really good things about what we're doing. And it goes to say a lot to the parents about how we're raising our kids. You know, Proverbs 22:6 talks about how we should train up our kids in the ways of the Lord. So, like I said, I spent a lot of years coaching youth sports, close to 20 years coaching youth sports. It's been a little bit over 11 years ago that Jamie and I got together. He asked me to help him in some of his youth ministry stuff at Suburban. So 11 years, and that time has really impressed upon me the importance of taking care of our kids and what we need to do to raise them up the way the Lord would want us to. He says it a lot, and there's quite a few verses in the Bible about how we need to treat our kids and what we need to do. So seeing kids be baptized, it's a pretty big deal to me. So that memory, like I said, was a pretty big one. So I tell a story, it'll be important here in a second. I tell a story about when I first got married. I first told my wife that I was never going to grow up. Did I hold true to that statement, Carson? Yeah, so I've held true to that statement. That'll be important here in a minute because there's a verse that I want to read. So Matthew 18, 1 through 3. At the time the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." So I guess, Katrina, I've never really explicitly told you why I'm never growing up, but it's because God told us not to, right? So, but on a serious note, I think we can learn a lot from those 5 young adults that were baptized on August 23rd. We have another baptismal that is going to take place next week, like Jamie said, and I hear there's more kids in our congregation that are going to get baptized. Man, it blows me away. Some of the examples these kids can give us as leaders. So I think we all need to kind of look at their example, look at their leadership, even at a young age, to become more like children so we can all enter the kingdom of heaven. So that's my favorite memory. I just want to thank you guys for being a part of that. Parents, the church congregation, the kids who got baptized. We got a lot more great memories and a lot more like the ones I just talked about to experience as a church. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Jim. My favorite memory of this last year was actually the same as Hannah's, but Jamie said I couldn't copy Hannah's, so I know, I thought about it. I thought about that. I'm going first, but, she's pregnant, so just kidding. So my second favorite event of the last year was our Halloween event, which, if you knew me, so I didn't grow up celebrating Halloween. So when we were doing this big drive-through trick-or-treat, I was like, cool, But when we drove through and I saw dozens of you all out there with your little cars, and big cars, decorated, and then saw this line of people who were dressed up and they were smiling and they were loving it. And it lifted my spirits. And after months of us being in isolation and not seeing people, it was like, wow, this is what it's about. This is what the church does in the community. And so I loved it. And it's not every day you get to drive down Gibson Hill and see Cookie Monster driving his truck and jump out and get a coffee mug that he left on top. And I even heard, and Gumby came out of like decades of isolation to come to our event. And there was even, I heard that there were some among us who were so dedicated that they used tattoo face paint. And they were celebrating like for a week. Isn't that awesome? And so anyway, and then my last picture here it's kind of dark, but that's Jamie. He didn't want to share our oxygen apparently, but it was really funny to see him in that very nice suit. So anyway, that was my second favorite event, which leads to my favorite event. So, that shows how great it was.
Wow, Beth. I feel so honored that I get to share your favorite event with everybody. I feel really bad, actually. Oh, my goodness. Okay. So the memory that stands out most to me and Beth and lots of other people is something that actually took place at an impromptu prayer time that we had at North Albany Park the beginning of June of this last year. And I know probably a lot of you were there, and you might even know exactly what I'm going to share. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a backstory to remind you of what was going on in our country at the time. And so I'm actually just going to read what I wrote, if that's okay, because I feel like it better articulates what I want to say. So, in March, 3 months prior, is when the pandemic began to sweep across the U.S., causing shutdowns and stay-at-home orders. Northside stopped meeting corporately, and we started doing online services. Life was turned upside down for most of us, in the way of needing to work from home, kids doing school from home. Some of you lost jobs, businesses went under, proms and graduations were canceled, sports events and all extracurricular activities were canceled. Many of you guys lost loved ones or were told to stay away from family and friends that you cared about so that we could stop the spread of the virus. And others of you worked tirelessly at a job on the front lines of the pandemic, continuing to serve the community under stressful and always changing conditions. Then, just 2 weeks prior to our June prayer gathering, George Floyd was killed. This caused riots and hate, and division, blaming, and civil unrest to also sweep across our nation. And it was because of this that on June 7th, we stopped the sermon series that we were in, and Jamie preached on 2 Chronicles 7:14, which says, "If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land." And then we announced at the end of this online service that anyone who was able was welcome to join us at the park just an hour later to pray, to come before the Lord as a church body, to seek his face, to humble ourselves and beg God to have grace and mercy on our nation, to forgive our sin and to heal our land. And there was an incredible turnout at this impromptu prayer gathering, and we were so encouraged by you guys showing up on like a moment's notice to pray. So we prayed together, and Matt led us in some worship songs, and as we started to sing, the song, I'll Raise a Hallelujah, it started to rain. Lightly at first, but by the time we got to the chorus, it was coming down pretty hard. No one ran for cover. We stood there together, singing that chorus, which seemed to hold a whole new meaning in light of everything that we were facing. This is the chorus. I'm going to sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're going to hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, and the King is alive. So as we stood there singing in the middle of a physical storm raining down on us, we proclaimed into the storms of our lives and the storms that were facing the nation that we were going to continue to praise our God. No matter the earthly circumstances, we had hope in our King who had defeated death, who was alive and ruling, and that out of the ashes, hope was going to arise. And we were going to continue to praise him through the storm. The symbolism of this event will forever stand out in my mind as a beautiful picture of praising God through every trial that we face.
Thank you, Hannah. I couldn't decide on one, so I chose two. Yeah, Jamie let me. Christmas Eve, my first time of getting to really spend time with the Northside family was Christmas Eve of 2019, and that was like one of our very first things we did all together, and that was really special. But somehow we managed to top it this last Christmas Eve, and we had to meet outside. And those of you that were there remember how cold it was. And one of the things that I remember, this is not a picture of when everybody was there. This was when we had just finished putting everything together, but there was such a joy in the air and just as we were putting everything together. And it was Christmas Eve in the morning that we were doing it, and we all got there at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and man, people's attitudes were just phenomenal. They were just happy, and they were encouraging one another, and they were joking around, and they were working hard to put together in a few hours this Christmas Eve outdoors that, supposedly was supposed to be warm and but we were able to get through it. Singing in the cold, my fingers went numb on the guitar, and I went back and listened to it afterwards, and I was really thankful that I still hit the right notes because I couldn't feel where my fingers were hitting on the fretboard. But just to sing together in the candlelight together, and to still pull off Hannah's story time with the kids out in the cold was so fun. And being at the school, and there were people who visited that had never come to a Northside service. It was just such a sweet way. When you think about Christmas Eve, we often make things really beautiful and really pretty and really like sparkly and shiny, and yet truly like the first Christmas was really not sparkly and not shiny, and it was really kind of rough. And being able to walk through that together this year, I think for me it helped me understand Christmas a little bit better. Just that the arrival that Jesus comes into kind of an unfortunate time and a difficult spot and still brings about that light and that truth and that goodness. And the second one for me was the worship night that we did. I was so proud of our church for our week of prayer and fasting that we did. That was so huge and so important, and there was such good turnout. And that worship night, we had been talking about it for a little while, and it was really on my heart, just as the worship guy here, to what does it look like for our church to kind of take another step into really seeking God with our whole hearts. And we really did that together. And that was not just, having certain music or certain lighting. It was your hearts. It was our hearts together, crying out to God, seeking his presence. And I love, he tells us that you'll seek me and you'll find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And that's what we experienced that night. And when we got to do the blessing, God had put that in my heart a couple weeks beforehand, just to extend our hands out towards one another, that we would bless each other. And my son, he was like looking at us, and I really wanted to do that song. I really wanted, like literally it like tore me up the week beforehand. I'm like, I know I'm going to be up there leading, but I so want to pray this over my own children and my own family. And my little Bubba was over there, and I saw him, and so he came up, and it was just such a blessing to me that there with my family to be able to bless you guys, our worship team, to bless you all, and to feel the blessing of God from you all. And I love that that's what our church is continually growing to be more and more about, is not just what can we get from each other, but what can we give inside this gathering, but also outside to the people around us. And so thank you all so much. And we have another video from actually Stadia, which is the church planting network that we've been a part of, and Jamie's really been the guy just connecting and getting trained by them, and Jamie and Brandy were assessed by them, and so Stadia has walked with us throughout this whole thing, and when they heard that we were doing our 1-year birthday celebration, they wanted to be a part of it in some way, and so we get a blessing from them now, and so we're going to watch this video from the people at Stadia.
Hey everybody in Northside Church, North Albany, Oregon. You guys rock. My name's Tim Selleck, and I'm with Stadia Church Planting. I'm so proud of you. You started, and just a few short weeks later, the pandemic hit of mythic proportions. And yet, this last Halloween, you had 1,000 people come to a drive-through trick and treat. Who does that? You had 200 people at your Christmas Eve services. Who does that? You had 5 people baptized this year. Who does that? You had 80 people show up impromptu to pray when everything was chaotically going on with the riots and everything happening in our country. Who does that? Well, Northside Church, being led by Jamie Mills. I'm just saying right now, Jamie is an incredible leader, and I'm so grateful for him. I'm so grateful for you. I look forward to how God's going to use you in this next year. Here's my verse for you this year, 1 Corinthians 15:58. Northside Church, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is never in vain. So good to see you celebrating a 1-year anniversary. Way to go. Woohoo!
So that is Tim Selleck, not Tom. Tim, he's the more handsome of the two. We have a setting on our projector that likes to do itself, I think. Like we had the same problem with the video on Christmas Eve where it looks like a zombie. I don't know what in the world is going on, but sorry about that. I want to introduce another person you guys may not know. She's a little quieter than a lot of people. But would you welcome my wife up? She's going to come and share just a little bit with me. So my wife and I have been married for 24 years.
I'm not giving the answer.
I know. I just want to make sure you knew because you think I don't know. I was testing you. It's 24 years. But one of the things that I thought would be fun for us to celebrate this evening, and kind of as we talk about Northside on our first birthday, is to help you guys understand some of the hurdles and some of the things that happen in the process of starting a church. So many times that my wife and I would literally find ourselves kind of on the brink of tears and sometimes in tears because of the things that God did in this process. And I'll be honest, some of them, I think they were completely miraculous. Sometimes I felt like God removed an obstacle, and other times I felt like He took care of an entire mountain that we were incredibly helpless in front of. And so, like, God's just amazing goodness and outrageous faithfulness continued to shine through this whole process. And so, kind of as a little bit of some like backstory, I actually considered church planting a long time before. So probably 11 or 12 years ago, I considered church planting. There's an online assessment that you can do. I took that through not Stadia, but through a different organization. I did really well on it. In fact, just a couple days later, I was meeting knee to knee with this guy, when you could do that kind of a thing, at Dutch Brothers on the campus of OSU. And he was talking about all these things with church planting. It sounded really great. Then he got to the point about fundraising, and I said, I'm out. And so I literally got up, and I was scared away by fundraising. I didn't want to do anything like that. About 6 or 7 years ago, from this point, it actually, church planting came up again, but where I was serving at the time, which was Suburban Christian Church, the timing of that just didn't make any sense, and I was still kind of scared from fundraising, and so decided that, like, not even to really kind of entertain that idea, and so ended up not doing that. And then, I don't even want to guess, maybe a couple years, 2.5 years ago, I ended up sitting down with the elders, the leadership at Suburban, where I'd served for about the last 19 years at that point or so. And we had been talking and praying and just, talking about what God might do and realizing that there was likely a change coming for Brandy and I, even though we weren't exactly sure what that was going to look like. And through prayer and all those other things, meeting and just sharing ideas, this kind of the idea of planting in a church in North Albany kind of rose to the surface. And there were so many things that had to happen, and so many times that we walked away just feeling like, man, I don't know if this is even possible, or maybe there was an excuse that we were making. But time after time after time, God ended up removing those obstacles. And so I wanted to share with you guys, we wanted to share with you guys just a few of those.
This is my signal. So one of the first things we did, we were being sent to this church plant assessment. So I didn't even know church plant assessment was a thing until this point, and that these organizations called like Stadia existed. But I was educated, and when we committed to step over the line and go through this assessment process, then the elders at Suburban were going to send us to this in Indianapolis. And I just we felt like this was us, like finally stepping over the line and committing and finally fully committing and seeing what God had for us in this process. But when we walked over that line, we just felt like we were hit. We were hit hard with spiritual warfare, like we'd never felt before. Now you have to kick me. Anyways, so yeah, everything that could possibly happen to keep us from going to Indianapolis happened, including the night before we were supposed to leave. Jamie's mom fell down the stairs at their church and shattered her hip, and they were supposed to come and stay with the kids. So like at this point, we're ready to throw in the towel. Like, forget this. This is just not worth it. But we pulled ourselves together. We made a few phone calls to some really great friends, and we made it to Indianapolis on very little sleep. And I hate flying, side note. So I'm walking into this, and then it was the assessment itself. You guys, this was not what I expected. This was a crazy, intense process, and it was so out of my comfort zone. But despite my dysfunction and my skepticism of the whole process, they gave us the green light and said, you guys should go plant a church. So I guess they must have seen, what potential this guy had.
Couldn't agree more. And so every time we practice that, I've said that line, and she's been gracious and let me say it without getting hit. So I decided I would just go and share it. And so, yeah, and what she was saying, I couldn't agree more. I remember there was other things that were going on in our family at that time that were just incredibly painful and hard. And that, like, when my mom fell down the stairs and shattered her hip and also broke some ribs, like, we just sat there and, like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, it literally felt like being like a bully under a magnifying glass or something like that. Like we were just kind of, somebody was, like, really messing with us. And I've never felt spiritual attack like that in my life. But it's funny because on the other end of that, we just became incredibly confident in what God was doing. And we left pretty discouraged, but we came back pretty resolute. And so that was a gift all in itself. Another major thing that God did that felt like, just insurmountable. Did I tell you didn't like fundraising? But that was another miracle, right? That was another miracle that God did in the process. And so through the process of planning and praying, one of the goals that Mike is going to come up here and share in a minute from Suburban, but my memory of it, and he can correct me, but it was like, this goal to raise about $100,000 over the course of a week, it's kind of like a way of saying, okay, is God really behind this? Is this really, something that God is behind and that the people would support? And so, at first I'm like, I don't know if that's possible. But then it dawned on me. It's like, that is actually a great throwing the fleece out and like just seeing, is this really something that God is behind? And so I remember kind of being worried about it, but then we started making this long list that Stadia had trained us to do about people that we'd contact about training, about financial support or whatever, and got to the point of starting to dig in and making those phone calls. And guys, I'm not joking, within 2 or 3 days it was there. I was in total like disbelief and in awe. And my wife and I went on, I think, the one of 2 dates that we went on that year. And we were at First Burger. Anybody have, like, real big-time dates at First Burger? That's where you go. And so, like, we went to First Burger, so good. And we got a phone call, but we were on a date. So I said, hey, we're going to call you back. And so we got home, and it was some friends of ours, some people from our past, that wanted to contribute to Northside. And when they told us what they were going to do, we were literally just completely, like, we couldn't talk because it was over halfway done right there. And we were just like, we looked at each other and it's like, what is that? And so we were just blown away, and that was another time where, like, honestly, I feel like God was basically saying, you know, where you're weak and you can't, I can. And so, like, I walked out of that conversation feeling like a goof, because I do cry quite a bit. But at the same time, just being, again, like, totally affirmed of what God was doing. And so that was a big one, but God continued to provide through many different avenues and many different people, some people that honestly I've never even heard of. And so, like, to continue to just kind of come in to the point where we've reached our financial goal way faster than I thought that we would. And so I was incredibly blessed. But another thing that's a part of, like, the fundraising mindset to me is also, like, these partnering churches. And I don't know if you guys are aware that Northside has several partnering churches. First and foremost for me, you know, Suburban is where I served for 20 years, and they are the mother church for what we're doing. And so, like, they gave incredibly generously and allowed us to ask some families to come with us. And so Northside is or Suburban. Usually it's the other way around. Suburban was so gracious and grateful. Southside Community Church, Joe, I saw he's here. Where'd you go, Joe? He's back there. You know, that's another church. Joe has been a friend of mine for 21 years now. And he and Southside have been just such an encouragement. And Joe and his church, they sent Matt to come and join our team to be starting a brand new church here. And so I couldn't say enough about Joe and his church and the friendship that we have with Southside Community Church. You guys got to meet Ken Swatman from Oregon City Church in the video earlier, but Woodburn Christian Church, Dayton Christian Church, Court Street Christian Church, Willamette Christian Church, Jesus Pursuit Church. Sorry, here we go again. Where's Emily? Did she come? There she is. So I'm going to brag on Emily. I wasn't sure she was going to be able to make it. She said she was going to try. So it was like day one, I think, Matt, when we were in our brand new office. And Emily shows up with, I think it was with Angela, and which is their worship leader, director, pastor. And anyway, Emily, who's the pastor at Jesus Pursuit, they showed up on our doorstep with a check to support Northside. I'd never met her before other than in passing at the prayer summit. And so to welcome us into Albany. And I'm going to brag about her too. Like, I learned from Suburban the importance of a unity movement in the city that you're in, something that they ingrained into me. And if you want to know a champion, somebody who's fighting for unity with the churches inside of our community, that's her. And so, yep. She has just continued to be a blessing to us over and over and over and over again. So you guys got to hear Angela do worship the other, what was it, a month or two ago? She's also crazy talented, just going to say, from the musical standpoint, crazy talented young lady. So North Albany Community Church, he couldn't be here tonight, but Tom Turner and North Albany Community Church, like, I'm just going to, sorry, it's going to take a little longer, but they're not charging us anything to meet here, you know, and we've been here now for how long? And so, like, in their own backyard, right, trying to reach out to the same group of people they are, is another example of a church that is kingdom-minded and is really willing to, like, go the extra mile to open up their doors and to make us feel home. And I'll be honest, if it wasn't for, you know, Jesus Pursuit and North Albany Community Church stepping in, I don't know what we would have done. And so I'm thankful for them. And then the Village Christian Church down the road, Mike Miller and his crew, we had most of our meetings early on there, and I don't think Mike was able to make it tonight either. So those are the supporting churches I can remember. I hope I got them all, but I hope that's a long list of people that have come beside and Northside, and I'm just so thankful.
So after some of that initial fundraising, we started to build what we called a launch team. And we started meeting with people, and some people were approaching us once they heard about the church plant. And some of those people were from Suburban that lived here in Albany and just wanted to invest in their community. And then just some others from the community, a couple other churches. And God just started building this amazing team, this family. And so we had our first launch team meeting at North Albany Park in August 2019. And then we started meeting at the Village Church where they hosted those meetings for us. And we just started praying and planning and preparing as a team.
Yep. Those are good times for sure. Another miracle, this was another miracle for me. Like, if you guys in North Albany drive around, you realize that facilities aren't, like, plentiful. And so once this was kind of happening and it was in motion, I was, like, driving around thinking, okay, Lord, where? Like, if you're planning a church in North Albany, please show me where, because we got to meet somewhere. And so driving around and trying to figure that out, and the only building that I saw that might even maybe kind of come close to working was North Albany, the elementary school, Oak Grove Elementary School. But at that point in time, you got to realize it was a tiny little white building with a gigantic horse on it, right? And so I remember driving on Scenic, going to work like I had so many times, and that building stuck out to me. And I remember praying as I went past it. It's like, Lord, it seems too small, but you know what you're doing. And so, God, if this is meant to be, I pray that the school would be open and receptive to this. And so I drove by and went to work, did my thing, and about maybe 2 or 3 days later, parts of it started disappearing. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And sure enough, come to find out that they were planning on building a brand new school. And I promise you, we didn't know anything about that when we started the process. And so I remember the day when I found out driving by it that like it seemed like that school was already in the process before I knew Northside was even going to be a thing. And you talk about a teary drive to work. It's like, God, what are you doing? But I just remember like feeling completely dumbfounded that God would look into every single detail to the point like that. Like a facility that he knew that we needed before we knew that we were even looking, because we didn't even know that this was happening completely. And anyway, so did I mention that God is good and God is faithful? Another thing that has felt miraculous to me was the way that the staff of Northside came together. And so, like, being able to rub shoulders with guys like Tim Selleck, I want to say Tom. Tim Selleck at Stadia, man, he's got energy, right? Such a great guy, but you like rubbing shoulders with him. Some of the things that we learn is like the staffing for a lot of church plants, it can be like a long, drawn-out, arduous process to staff a church because, like, there's not a ton of money in it, right? And so, like, often you're asking people to come and to join, and it can be a really, really kind of an arduous, long process to do that. And so when it got time to get serious about staff, it was just one of those things that we walked through. And again, it just felt like a miracle the way that it all came together. And so I'm going to let my wife share a little bit about one of those.
So one of our first hires was Hannah. Jamie and I first met Hannah when her and her husband Chris just showed up in our small group one day at Suburban. Just kidding, they didn't just show up. But, and we just quickly got to know how amazing they were, and listened to Hannah tell stories about her homeschooling and teaching other kids online. And she'd tell these stories about these extravagant birthday parties she would throw her kids, and we're just like, you know, she's really cool. And then when the church plant thing started becoming a reality, she just, for whatever reason, was one of the first people that came to our mind as a children's director. And so, you know, yeah, I don't even remember exactly how it all happened, but she became our first hire, and we quickly realized our suspicions about how really cool she is.
Yep. She's incredibly gifted, and so excited to have her on staff. Another, you know, as we were kind of thinking about, well, we need to have somebody because student ministry is going to be important. I did that for a long time, and it's really important to me. And so we started to make a list of who could we ask to work with students. And one of the people on my short list was Jim. And I think I had 3 or 4 names of people I wanted to talk to. And as I made that list, Jim rose to the top. Jim is a guy that I worked with at Suburban for over a decade, as he mentioned. And I knew that he was good one-on-one with students. Like, when you watch him with students, you realize, like, he is good with kids. With middle school and high school students, and then got to hear him teach a few times and realized not only is he good with kids, dude can teach. And so more and more I got to know him and see his skill set. And I remember sitting down with Jim in my office at home, which is a little creepy because it's a bedroom upstairs. But like sitting down and sharing with him this idea, it's like, hey, Jim, you know, like, is this something you might be interested in? We prayed about it, and it felt like kind of we left that meeting thinking like, this is like really likely that this is going to happen. And it was maybe just a few days later that kind of got ironed out. So Jim joined the team.
Then next on our list was Beth. I met Beth for the first time through this leadership group that her and I had signed up for through Suburban, and I quickly grew to respect her, her wisdom and her humility and her sense of humor. And I remember meeting with Chad and Beth downtown at Margin Coffee when they were just considering being a part of Northside, and I got really excited that they were even thinking about that. And when Jamie brought up the idea of offering the job of administrative assistant to Beth, I got really excited, and I told him I thought she would be an excellent asset, and I hoped that she would agree, and she did, and hopefully she doesn't regret that. I don't think she does.
Beth is hilarious. Like every day, every staff meeting, we learn something new about Beth. You know, like she is a mole trapping expert, and she's a ping pong wizard, and like she actually, when she dresses up, can look exactly like Jack Sparrow. And like, anyway.
She makes fancy pants.
Yeah, she makes fancy fancy plants. And we'll have to get you guys a picture. Next week, I'll try to remember to get you guys a picture of that because I think she's taking orders. It's hilarious. Anyway, And so Beth was, awesome, and I'm so glad that she's on board. And then Matt, I've known Matt since he was in middle school, and I don't know if you guys know this, but the dude's a professional drummer. He's absolutely wicked talented behind a drum set and guitar and vocals and everything else. But I remember meeting Matt and thinking, I wish I could play the drums like that, and just getting to know him. And then he became a youth pastor at Southside, and we started doing events together and became super jealous and started asking Matt to come along almost every middle school or high school camp or retreat that I did, and he would come. And I remember I could take you to the place I was standing on more than one occasion where I would joke around about someday working with Matt in a scenario just like this, never dreaming that it would actually happen. It's funny because God knew, right? And so when we had these conversations about working out so that Matt could come, and something that I believe that God was in the process of kind of working out way before I even knew too, I just sat there and I almost couldn't believe it. Like when we were talking about it, I would walk away, and I have a feeling on more than one occasion I almost maybe came across as disappointed to Matt. And I think really what I was doing was just preparing for disappointment that it might not work out. And so to have somebody like Matt on staff at a church plant, just so you know, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And so we are incredibly blessed by the staff at Suburban. And then there's one last Northside. I told you. It's 2 in a row, 2 weeks in a row. We're going to have a jar I put money in, and when we get enough money, we can all go out for ice cream or something. Sorry. Yeah. And there's one other thing that I wanted to mention before our time is done, and it's another thing that I really felt like was miraculous. Lastly, I want to mention one other person that I feel like could have put the kibosh on this whole thing. In my opinion, I think it takes outrageous courage and kingdom vision and a strong desire to see God's kingdom expand right here in the valley, because the truth is when you start talking about planting a church just 20 miles or so away from a church that you're leading, normal people don't agree to that. They just don't. And so to be able to have somebody like Mike at Suburban who was able to listen and understand and to talk this thing through, and the entire time I've never seen him flinch even once. I remember talking with Mike before anybody even knew that this was an idea, and having that conversation, and he was incredibly supportive. And the truth is, I think I told him this in that moment, but I knew it was true in my heart if I didn't say it, that if he wasn't on board and that if he couldn't support Northside, and it was called Scenic Church for about a month and a half. Thank goodness God saved us from that. But if he couldn't get on board with it, I wouldn't have done it because it could be divisive and incredibly unhealthy. And so that was one of the things that just was required for Northside to exist. And so his support and his willingness to not only be a part of it, but to lead when this was really in its earliest stages, he had to lead that process. Is something that I will forever remember about him, forever be impressed with about him, something that I hope someday that God gives me that kind of faith and that kind of kingdom vision, because I'm not sure I possess it in the moment. And so I will always be grateful for Mike. I've asked Mike to come share, and so would you please welcome Mike King.
Thank you, Jamie. If it makes you feel any better, my wife thinks I'm abnormal, too. I hear that fairly often. For those of you that haven't had a chance to meet before, my name is Mike King, and as Jamie said, I am the senior pastor at Suburban Christian Church, kind of over on the other side of the valley. Steve Lee was my predecessor there, who served just really faithfully for 31 years in that place, and God just did some tremendous, tremendous things there, and he's still up to that. And I'm just really excited to have a chance to be here. This is really fun. As opposed to Jamie, I cry about once a year. But you guys, I may get 2020 checked off the list like by the time this evening is done. It's just so, I was just really thrilled when Jamie invited me to come and just play a really small part in this service, because it gives me a chance to let you all know that for the last year, your friends at Suburban have been praying for you, and have been thinking about you, and have been rooting for you and cheering you on from a distance. So on their behalf, let me just say both happy birthday and congratulations. You guys have found a way not just to survive, but really thrive in what's got to be just like the weirdest year ever to plant a church. As people have pointed out, we at Suburban, we helped plant Northside back in February. You guys met like 5 Sundays, and then the world kind of fell off a cliff. I can't think that it's in anybody's manual of how to plant a church well to say, just meet online for the first year. But you guys have done that. And you guys have really seen God move, and the church has been working. Now, it has made all of Jamie's hair fall out, so it's, but these are the kind of things that you've been through, the kind of things that could easily stop a church plant in its tracks. Like I said, through it all, you guys have stayed connected to God and to each other, and you have adapted, and you've rolled with the punches, and you have found a way to continue to stay connected to God and to serve in your community. Think about how you were responding with Christ's love when Lynn County burned this summer, and people were at the fairgrounds that needed help, and you were there reaching out to them in the name of Christ, and you've relied on God's grace to carry you. And I really do believe that God is going to use the challenges that you have gone through this year to really help bind you together into a powerful community that's going to have a huge impact in North Albany for years to come. And I'm grateful to God for what he's done. And I'm just really proud of you. I'm proud of Jamie and your staff and your management team and how they've led in this. And as I was thinking about our birthdays, it got me thinking about some of the birthdays that we've celebrated with our kids. We have 4 kids. And when our youngest, Tessa, turned about 1 year old, we made this little cake for her. And up until that point, we hadn't really given her much sugar or anything like that. So, on that first birthday, it's like you kind of give it to them, you're like, ooh, what are they going to do, right? So we gave her this little cake, and at first she kind of looks at it. It's like, not sure what it is. And then she takes this really kind of tentative little lick. Then there's this long pause. And then this happened, right? And I have never seen a kid open up their mouth and just go to town on a piece of cake the way that Tessa Jane did. It was really awesome. And in fact, it was awesome, and it was really well-deserved. Because think about it, that first year, that's hard for a baby, right? A doctor pulls them out of this nice warm place, and they have to come into this cold, hard, cruel world. They got to figure out how to sleep through the night and how to crawl and how to walk. Babies and their parents go through a lot in that first year, which is why I was really glad that Tessa enjoyed that cake. Because she had earned it, right? She faced a lot in her first year, and she made it through. And in the same way, that's our hope and our prayer from the family at Suburban to all that we have for you. That you would look back on this first year, and you would just acknowledge the way that God's grace has sustained you in the midst of challenges. And having done that, you would just stop, and you would take a moment, and you would celebrate where God has brought you, and also celebrate the good things that he has in store for you. So today is a day we're celebrating. So in his grace and in his power, I pray that you can open wide and enjoy it to the full.
Thank you, Mike. I'm telling you, God is good, and God is faithful. What a year it's been, and I'm so grateful that we've had the opportunity to get to know some of you over the year, and an opportunity to grow close. And I feel like my friendship level has been overflowing, and I'm truly, truly grateful that we are able to be here tonight and to celebrate what God is doing, knowing and anticipating what's to come, and knowing that the best I really do believe is just right ahead of us. And so the management team, I want to share this. I meant to share it earlier, but I forgot, so I'm going to do it right now because I remember with the management team. Another miraculous thing that God did, just so you know, this is very uncommon for a church plant. We have over 80 years of pastoral experience between the management team and the staff at Northside. And so that's crazy. That doesn't happen. And so, in the midst of whatever we want to call 2020, has been incredibly valuable, and it's been a huge resource. And I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful. But one of the things that the management team felt like would be a great way to kind of commemorate and to celebrate Northside's first birthday is to open up the opportunity for people to become the very first members of Northside Church. And so that's what we're going to do today. And it's something that we've talked about over the last few years, so hopefully it doesn't come as a surprise. There was a form kind of like in every one of the clusters of chairs. And so, if you read that through and say hey, no, this fits us and it's something that we want to commit to, you can do one per family, but just please write down your names. And if there's different things that are true of each of you, just kind of write that out for us. It would be great. But I want you to let you know that here in a minute we're going to sing a couple of songs and have the opportunity for people to come forward and to turn those in during worship if that's what you feel like God would have you do. Membership, I just want you to know that it's not required to pray with us. It's not required to worship with us. It's not required to hang out with us. But I really do believe that there's a handful of things that membership does that is incredibly valuable. And that's something that God has worked into my heart because I needed that work to be done before I could understand why membership is such a healthy thing. I think that it has several important purposes, and I'm just going to name a few. One of those important things is I think that membership really helps us to make sure that we're kind of stacking hands on, that we agree on, and that we're kind of committed to the same thing. Well, we're committed to the same things. And so I think that there is an aspect of unity that happens in membership. I think membership speaks toward our commitment to reflect, God and to be a part of His church, toward being a productive member or a part of Northside Church, about, living out all of those one another's that we see in Scripture. I can't remember exactly how many there are, but there's a ton. Loving one another, encouraging one another, bearing with one another, and understanding membership is one of those ways that we kind of put ourselves in that circle of saying, you know what, I'm officially saying that I'm into that. And that I want to be inside of Northside, and I want to be some of those people that are bearing with and encouraging and loving one another right here at this small part of God's body that we call Northside Church. I also think that being a member, it allows you to speak into the leadership, into the direction of Northside in important and appropriate ways. And so that's another important thing that I think that membership can do for us. If there wasn't a form, or if you need more forms than what was on your chair, there are some at the table, the welcome table, and you're welcome to grab one there too. I don't know if you all remember this, if you were with us about 6 months ago. I wish I could find the date. I couldn't. But it was in the middle of our online services, and it was really kind of hard. Still, it's kind of hard to track, who's hanging with us online and all that kind of stuff. And I remember there was a service where I'm like, gosh, I don't know who's out there, and I don't know exactly how to do this. And so I think at the end of one of our services, I made this comment. I think I said, hey, if you're still tracking with us and if you're still all in on this church plant thing, would you text us the phrase all in? And I could take you to the exact place I was sitting in my living room when my phone lit up for the next 30 minutes with text after text after text after text after text. I immediately started searching our phone plan to see if roaming was in effect. But in all seriousness, I want you to know that I, at that point, was just another one of those memories, another one of those things where I knew that God was behind this, that it's bigger than me, and it's bigger than any one person on the staff or the management team, or bigger than any one of us in the room. And to me, that is another kind of a sign of what membership is. It kind of reminds me of that all-in kind of a commitment as I sat in the chair in our living room that day. Today, I feel like that's kind of what we're doing. It's if you're watching online and want to become a member at Northside, you're not excluded. You can actually go on our website, which is northside-albany.com, and find that. If you can't, you can email us, office@northside-albany.com, and we'd be happy to get those forms to you. But as I was thinking about this is actually one of my favorite passages in Scripture. I go to it fairly regularly. It's Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47. And when I read this with the idea of membership, it kind of helps me understand, because I think it kind of gives us a framework as to the purpose of it. And so Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47 out of the English Standard Version says this: "And they, the early church, devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and to breaking of bread and to prayer. And awe came over every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together, and they had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings, distributing the proceeds to all as they had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their numbers every day those who were being saved." And to me, membership kind of has that feel. It's like saying, hey, we're in this together. We're devoted to these things together. It's adding some clarity to our attention to be a part of this portion of His body, to support it, to use our gifting and to encourage and to support the leadership of it, to do our part. And when it comes to doing our part, there's one thing that I just want to make clear with you. I'm still all in. I am still all in. And so as I'm going to ask Matt and the worship team to come up and get ready, but as we do that, if that's where you're at, and if you feel like that's something that God would have you do, we wanted to give you an opportunity to become part of the very first membership of Northside Church. And so as we sing a couple of songs, if that's something that you're interested in doing, you can come up and put your forms in at that time. I'm going to be in the back. If you have questions or concerns or things that you want to talk about during that, feel free to come and do that as well.
We're going to spend just a few minutes here just singing and giving thanks to God. He is the author, perfecter of our faith. He's the one who has started this all, and He is the only one that will sustain it.
All the saints and angels bow before your throne. All the elders cast their crowns before